One of the most exciting elements of Dragon's Dogma 2 for me is all the insane enemy types we've seen throughout the gameplay and the trailers so far. I love a good boss encounter or even just fighting regular mobs throughout the world. The combat of any open world RPG is definitely my favorite part of the game. And a lot of that comes down to the actual combat, but a lot of that comes down to the enemies as well. So today I wanted to come and break down all 21 enemy types that have been confirmed so far in Dragon's Dogma 2. Now there isn't gameplay for all of these just yet, but there are images and descriptions for all 21 of these enemies. So where I can, I'll link the gameplay to the discussion that we're having, but just bear in mind, there might be times that I'm showing dragon gameplay and I'm talking about a Goblin or something like that, but I will be scouring all of the gameplay to try and find some gameplay for as many of these enemy types as I can. Now, starting in no particular order, we have what is called the Drake, and as you can see by the image, this is very clearly just a dragon. The description says though that it is a monster of the dragon family. The Drake spits out powerful flames. It also possesses the intelligence to skillfully manipulate magic. If you encounter one, be prepared for an all-out battle. There has been a lot of gameplay fighting against these dragons, or the Drakes, I guess as they're called. They look like absolutely awesome boss fights, and obviously seeing as the game is called Dragon's Dogma 2, it is pretty obvious there was going to be a lot of dragon fights in this game, simply because it is in the title of the game. We then have the Dollahan or Dollahan, I'm not too sure how that is pronounced, but the Dollahan is a knight covered in spiritual purple flame, cradling its own head in its arm. He engages in deadly swordplay with a firm stance. In the dark, he transforms into black mist and stalks the living. So this dude sounds pretty damn creepy. These guys are essentially holding their own heads, and as I said at the end there, in the dark they transform into a black mist, meaning you essentially won't be able to see them and they can stalk you in the dark. So you definitely do not want to be going out at night whenever possible, because it seems this guy will pretty much be hunting you down. Now next up we have easily the biggest enemy in this game. I'd imagine this is going to be a boss fight. I don't think this is just going to be wandering around at random, and this is the Talos. Now it says Talos, the bronze giant from Legends, rises from the sea. Its massive frame can walk over valleys with ease. Just like a divine punishment, it mercilessly brings chaos to the land. Like I said, this is easily going to be the biggest enemy type in the game, at least that we know of so far. Hopefully there's none bigger, because holy shit, that would be impossible to beat. This guy looks hard enough as it is, and as you can see from the gameplay, it seems we do have to actually climb onto his frame and attack him from like standing on his shoulders and stuff like that. So this is no doubt going to be a very, very interesting boss encounter, assuming this is a boss, which I dare say that it will be. We then have a Wight, and it says a Wight is a priest's spirit that still holds a grudge, eventually becoming a monster. It hides in darkness, casting powerful spells in succession from the sky. It makes upfront fights difficult by wielding a huge amount of magic. Now, I think we do have gameplay of this, but I'm not 100% sure because it is dark. But as the description said, it seems as though these will essentially be hiding in darkness, so we're probably only really going to see these at night, and thank God for that, because they look absolutely terrifying, and it seems they're going to be pretty hard to beat as well. Next up, we have what is easily the best name in this entire game. This is the Knacker. Now, the Knacker is a type of goblin that wields a long weapon. They're agile on elevated terrain and good at raiding from higher ground. Underestimate their mobility and you may be easily overpowered. So these kind of look like orcs, to be honest, more than goblins, and they're definitely a lot bigger than the other goblins that we'll get to eventually. They look a lot bigger than the human in this screenshot, so definitely very interested, and hopefully these guys aren't too hard, because as you can see, they look like they hunt in packs, and that is going to be very, very annoying. Next up, we then have the minotaurs. They are ferocious and extremely fierce bull-headed monsters. A single hit from their battle axe or charge attack can prove to be fatal, so it definitely seems like these are going to be a very difficult enemy to fight. The fact that they can potentially one-hit kill you is absolutely insane, but I'd imagine these are the type of enemies we won't see all that often, just judging on how often we've seen them throughout the gameplay. Next up, we have the Cyclops. These are monstrously strong one-eyed giants. They wield huge weapons with ease and won't back down from a fight. Strike their lone eye with ranged attacks, or test your bravery by climbing and attacking the eye directly. So it seems as though the eye is pretty much their only weak point. I'm sure you'll be able to kill them without actually attacking that eye, but it'll probably take a hell of a long time. We have seen a lot of gameplay fighting against these Cyclopses that I'm essentially calling trolls throughout all my other videos. So it does seem these are going to be at least somewhat common, and they definitely look like a very fun enemy type. We then have the Rattlers. These are four-legged beasts whose back seems to be covered in rocks. They appear in mountainous areas and can be mistaken for a giant rolling boulder. Try to knock them down and aim for the weak spot on their stomach. These things look so frustrating to fight just because of all the rocks on their back. You can just tell they're going to be super armored. They're going to be one of those enemy types that is really frustrating to fight. But I personally love that in games like this. Anything that is a challenge for me makes the game more enjoyable. We then have a Chopper. This is a type of goblin that lurks in the shadows of the deep forest. Quick on their feet, these pesky foes excel at ambushing and taking advantage of the terrain in which they dwell. This is what I was talking about before. These are obviously much smaller goblins compared to the Knackers, and I think the description was pretty on point calling them pesky because they look like they're going to be definitely very pesky. We then have the Griffins. These are giant monsters with the wings of an eagle and the body of a lion. They soar high and circle in the sky, striking once they spot their prey. There is nowhere to hide in this giant bird's territory. These look like they're going to be absolutely insane to fight. I've actually seen clips of people holding onto their back, at which point they get lifted up into the sky and eventually get thrown off by the Griffin to an inevitable death. So it's going to be very interesting to find out which is the best way to attack these. Although looking at this clip, if you use the magic archer, I dare say this is going to be the best way to take out the Griffins because this attack looks absolutely insane. We then have the Undead. These are described as rotting corpses reanimated by the forces of evil. They appear in the darkness, sniffing out and attacking the living. Fortunately, they are vulnerable to fire and holy attacks. So these seem like they're going to be those type of enemies that are pretty easy, but there will no doubt be a lot of them. And as it said in that description, they appear in the darkness. If you guys have heard about the day-night cycle in this game, it is essentially very, very dangerous to be going anywhere during the night. So it's going to be one of those things where these aren't that dangerous, but if you go out at nighttime, they can probably cause you a little bit of trouble. Similar to those, we then have the Skeletons. These are mortal monsters that perpetually wander in death. Though they are nothing but bones, the curse placed upon them allows them to keep moving. Beware of their fast movements lest you wish to get hurt. So these seem pretty similar to the Undead. Again, I'm pretty sure these only come out at night, and they're going to be some of those like easier enemies, but they're probably a little bit pesky as well. It says there that they've got quick movement, so they're most likely still going to put up a solid fight. Now, next up we have the Slimes, and it says slimes can crawl slowly through complex terrain as the substance of their bodies dissolve enemies that get in the way. Physical attacks have no effect against this monster. So how I take that is that pretty much if you're not using magic or something, using flame or something like that, you're not going to be able to deal any damage to them at all. If you're using just your sword or a bow and arrow or something like that, you physically cannot deal damage to the slimes. Now, I have to imagine these are going to be pretty slow and just pretty easy to handle, but the fact that you have to use magic, that definitely makes them a little bit more annoying, which again, any challenge is a good challenge to me. Next up, we have the Ogre. This is a heinous looking ogre known for its formidable strength and its liking for women, whose smell it pursues relentlessly, captures, and then attempts to devour. Although large in size, be wary of its speed as it rushes towards you. Now, this definitely looks a little bit different to what I typically think of when I think of an ogre. It almost looks a little bit more like a cross between an ogre and a werewolf or something, but they definitely look very dangerous. And we do see some gameplay of these actually ambushing enemies on the cart. So I dare say these are going to be some very frustrating and I guess in a way scary enemies, in that they're just going to kind of come out of nowhere and essentially try and maul you and your pawns. Next up, we have the Golem. These are artificial light forms created by sorcerers made of a strong, impenetrable rock structure that repels magic and physical attacks. The only way to halt its movement is to break the metals on its body. So I'm not 100% sure how to deal damage to it. It says it repels magic and physical attacks. I've got to assume that magic and physical attacks can still break those metals on its body, but as golems are in essentially any other game, they are always very, very difficult to fight, and it seems it is going to be absolutely no different here at all. Next up, we have the Chimera. This is by far the most clapped looking monster that I've seen in this game so far, and I'm all here for it. I absolutely love monster designs when they are just absolutely cursed. The description for the Chimera is that it is a four-legged, three-headed headed monster bearing the visages of a lion, a goat, and a serpent. Each head has its own method of attack, including the ability to bite, cast magic, and poison foes. So these seem like they're going to be very difficult. They're going to have 3 different ways of attacking you, and they're probably all going to attack you at the same time. The gameplay we see fighting the Chimera looks so much fun to me, so I cannot wait to get into a fight against one of these absolutely cursed looking monsters. Next up, we have the Saurian or the Saurian, I'm not too sure. These are evolved from the lizard family. The scaly Saurians mostly dwell near water and wield spear-like weapons. Dismembering their tails can weaken them and make them lose their will to fight. So I'm really liking how different all of these seem in terms of it's not just a hack and slash where you just hit the enemies until they die. There are ways to take them out in different ways than the other enemy types. And to me, I absolutely love that. It makes every fight feel completely different than the last one. And I've got to say, these dudes look absolutely sick. Next up, we have the Harpies. These are eerie flying creatures with an upper body that resembles that of a human female. They often hover above in the skies ready to strike. Their hypnotic screeches can lull you to sleep, exposing you to their sharp bird-like talons. These are yet another absolutely clapped looking enemy type. Any flying enemy in any game like this, they always give me PTSD. They are always so annoying to fight, and I feel like the Harpies are going to be absolutely no different. So I'm definitely going to be doing my best to avoid the Harpies whenever I can. Next up, we have wolves, and these are obviously a pretty easy explanation. It says wolves hunt in packs. They are often found roaming the nearby forests and the mountain areas. There's not too much to go over there. I feel like wolves in essentially any game are pretty much identical. So like I said, these ones are pretty self-explanatory. Now, lastly, we have 2 different types of goblins. The first one is the hobgoblins. These are a higher class of goblin with a more developed stature. They are experts at hunting prey with flawless movements and also skilled at handling weapons. Beware not to underestimate them and approach with caution. So these look pretty much the same as a lot of the other goblins, but they definitely look more advanced, as the description said. They're wielding some pretty beefy weapons there, and they're like fully armored and stuff like that. So these essentially seem like they're all the other goblins, but on steroids. Lastly, we then just have regular goblins. These are armed demons that are smaller in stature than most humans. They possess limited intelligence, but are ferocious and move by instinct. They become hostile and attack in packs if their turf is invaded. If I'm going to be honest, these just look like the hobgoblins from Wish. I'm sure they'll still be very fun to fight, but they definitely look a lot easier than fighting those hobgoblins. But honestly, I'm all here for all of these different types of goblins. That is, I believe, 4 different types now, and I'm absolutely down for that much variety. But those are all 21 confirmed enemy types in Dragon's Dogma 2 so far. Now, if they update this, I will definitely do an updated video going through all of the new ones. I'm not sure if this will be every single enemy type in the game, or if this is just 21 that they've confirmed so far. The way that all of the other marketing has gone, I dare say there's going to be probably more enemy types than this. So expect to see a few others that we just haven't seen so far. But as of right now, these are all 21 enemy types that we know of so far in Dragon's Dogma 2. Let me know in the comments which one you guys are most excited to fight. I think for me, it is probably the Chimera. They look absolutely insane. So leave your thoughts down below. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.